Chayei Sarah. From the text in the next Torah portion, Chayei Sarah, we will learn about how the text itself points to Mashiach, how the relationship between Avraham and Sarah points to the connection between the spirit and the body, how Sarah's tomb points to the resurrection, how Sarah herself points to the resurrection, and about how Rivka's arrival and marriage to Yitzhak allude to Yerushalayim and the second coming. We will also learn about random and fun explanations to verses. It says in Genesis 23 verse 1, "And Sarah was 107 and 20 years old. These were the years of the life of Sarah." The opening verse of Chayei Sarah literally means, "And the life of Sarah was 100 years and 20 years and 7 years." The years of the life of Sarah. The way this is written is strange, as the Torah usually writes the age of people who died like this, "And Sarah lived 127 years." The Midrash explains that this is because when Sarah was 100 years old, she was as beautiful and young as a 20-year-old, and when she was 20 years old, she was as innocent as a 7-year-old. Another explanation is that it's written this way so that the first 4 words in the first verse of this Torah portion, in Hebrew, spell out the name of Mashiach, albeit the letters are not in order. One explanation as to why the verse says the life of Sarah twice is to allude to the first life and the second life. A part of Genesis 23 verses 2 through 3 says, "Avraham came to mourn for Sarah and to weep for her, and Avraham stood up from before his dead." The mystics compare the union of Avraham and Sarah to the union of the spirit and the body. In this analogy, Avraham is compared to the spirit, and Sarah is compared to the body. Sarah brought on Avraham's spiritual aspirations into the physical world through the birth of Yitzhak. When Sarah died, Avraham grieved over her for a time, but then he rose from beside her. The mystics say that when a person dies, the spirit lingers next to the body to grieve it, but then it rises up to paradise. Although God had promised the entire land of Canaan to Avraham and his descendants, at the time of Sarah's death, Avraham didn't own any part of Canaan, and he negotiated with the local Canaanites to find a burial cave for his wife. He found a cave in Hebron called Machpelah, and even today Jews regard this cave as a holy site. Avraham bought this plot of land because he believed in the resurrection of the dead. Avraham believed that in the world to come he would be reunited with Sarah, just as the soul is reunited with the body in the resurrection. In addition to the resurrection, Jewish tradition also relates the cave of Machpelah to the Garden of Eden and eternal life. The rabbis believed that Avraham chose the cave because he discovered that the field which the cave was on was a portal to the Garden of Eden. One source even states that Avraham discovered Adam and Eve entombed inside the cave. Avraham recognized the spiritual presence of the Garden of Eden, but Ephraim the Hittite recognized no such thing. This explains why Avraham was willing to purchase the cave at any price. Tradition says that the resurrection will begin with those who are buried in the cave of Machpelah, as it says in Pirkei Mashiach Bet Hamidrash 3:73 and 74. In that hour, Messiah goes up and brings glad tidings to those who sleep in Machpelah, and says to them, "Avraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, rise. Enough, you have slept." And they reply and say, "Who is this who removes the dust from over us?" And he says to them, "I am Messiah of the Lord. Salvation is near. The hour is near." And they answer, "If it really is so, go and bring the tidings to Adam, the first man, so that he should rise first." In that hour they say to Adam, the first man, "Enough, you have slept." Sarah is the mother of our faith, and in turn, Sarah is the mother of our reward for our faith, the resurrection. As it says in Safat Emet in Yachut Mashiach, Chayei Sarah 21, Adam and Eve brought death to the world, but Avraham and Sarah brought the resurrection of the dead to the world. Because Avraham and Sarah had no offspring at first, they were as good as dead. But then they believed that God was someone who gives life to the dead and calls into being that which does not exist. As it says in Romans 4, verse 17 through 19, God gave them the gift of a son, and in turn, the Messiah, the opening of the gates of Eden, and eternal life. In Genesis 24, verse 67, it says, And Yitzhak brought her into his mother Sarah's tent, and took Rebekah, and she became his wife, and he loved her. And Yitzhak was comforted after his mother's death. Before Rebekah arrived, Yitzhak mourned over the loss of his mother, and Sarah's tent stood empty and forgotten. According to the rabbis, Rebekah's presence in Sarah's tent rekindled the life and the miracles that had ceased after Sarah's death, as it says in Genesis Rabbah 60 verse 16. And so Yitzhak saw her following his mother's footsteps. Rivka's arrival comforted Yitzhak because she was worthy to carry on his mother's legacy. It says in Ecclesiastes Rabbah 1 verse 10, Before he caused the sun of Sarah to set, he caused the sun of Rivkah to rise. Sarah's tent points to Yerushalayim. When the Messiah returns and gathers everyone from exile, the miracles of God's presence will be restored, and the sorrows of exile will be forgotten, as it says, Thus Yitzhak was comforted after his mother's death. The text of Chayei Sarah points to Mashiach. The relationship between Avraham and Sarah points to the connection between the spirit and the body. Sarah's tomb points to the resurrection. Sarah herself points to the resurrection. Rivka's arrival and marriage to Yitzhak alludes to Yerushalayim and the second coming.